Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. and I'd like to call the meeting of the Town Council to order on July 13th. I'd like to start with welcoming our newest member, Connor. We certainly appreciate your interest in serving, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone at our meeting tonight and throughout the town hall, and to include our department heads. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome.
Clean up my screen here for a minute.
I like your tie, Connor.
Oh, thanks.
If we could please take a moment of silence to reflect on all those that currently serve and have served in the past, enabling us a healthier and safer lifestyle. Thank you all. In accordance with Mass General Law, tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. I would ask if anyone in our audience is recording, if you could please identify yourself. It's good, Don.
I don't see anybody, Mike.
Thank you. Tonight's meeting is being held virtually through a Zoom webinar pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Before we officially, well, we are officially started, but I'd like to just mention the reorganization of the town council, our vice president and president. This is dictated by the charter, and this event takes place on our first meeting, which is the second Tuesday in July. This is our first meeting and probably our only meeting for the month of July. So that's mandated per Article 2, Section 3 of the Charter. I'd also like to mention, I'm sure that most of you enjoying all the festivities around town, the carnival, fireworks, the parade. I was approached by many residents basically asking me how everything played out for the year and what were we looking at for the remainder of the year. So I'd just like to mention a couple of highlights and challenges that occurred over the past year. Obviously, as president, I was able to observe and participate. After reviewing Mary's suggested path forward, all the components had to be revisited due to the pandemic, including our projected budget totaling $60+ million. I'd just like to thank Mary for her technical experience and her ability to rebuild our many vacant positions, which certainly contributed to navigating through this complicated pandemic situation. Mary's willingness to communicate with me after hours and on weekends certainly contributed to resolving the many obstacles that took place, and certainly take a lot of pressure off myself and our full council here. I have experienced Mary's unique fit with the department heads, and their trust in her certainly speaks volumes. So it's been my pleasure to serve as our president and have the opportunity to work with Mary. And I thank the entire town council for making that happen. Other than that, I don't know if anyone was approached by residents at the events, but that's my walk away. So that being said, I think our first order of business here is to, I would say, if you could raise hand. Oh, I'm sorry, Mary.
I'm sorry to butt in on your agenda, but I feel compelled to, we'll say thank you, Michael, and for those nice, kind remarks, but also to echo and reciprocate them back to you. You know, I've been here now for 2 years, 4 months as acting and roughly 18 or so as your selected town manager. And I've really been blessed by having Kathy Hill as the president in my first year and you as the president this past year. Between the two of you, you've made the town manager's role much easier to accomplish. And so I want to thank you both for that. And also to just advise the public and the rest of the council and all the department heads who might be watching tonight, that the whole year of COVID was, a disaster in some respects, but in other respects, it presented an opportunity for me personally and for the town as a whole, I hope, to reflect and realize how fortunate we are to have each other as teammates and working together for the common good, and supporting each other through these very, very difficult times. So I just can't say enough about Mike Kane as president. He's practical, he's businesslike, he's efficient, he's organized. He's a lot of things I wish I could do better. And he and Kathy, at least in my experience, have made a fantastic management team for me to work with. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And I want to thank everybody for all your support over this last year too, because obviously the diversity that comes out of this council has made my job much easier than it would be certainly without everyone's help. So the first thing I'd like to do is maybe see a show of hands to nominate an individual for president. Ralph?
Mike, going forwards, I would like to nominate yourself, Michael Kane, to continue as president for the next year.
Thank
I'll
you.
second that.
Okay, so we have nominated individual in a second. So I'd like to have a roll call vote on that. And I think we'll start with Marilyn.
Point of order, do we want to see if there are any other nominations before we move forward?
I will do that, but I kind of wanted to finish the sequence with this, and then I'll ask if there are any other nominations.
No,
So-
president.
Yes, but I thought I'd roll call the motion that Ralph made on the floor, and then I'll come back and see if there's anyone else. So we're not appointing me at this point in time. I'm just accepting the nomination with a roll call vote.
So this is only for the nomination of Mike.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. So Marilyn,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Connor,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes,
Ralph,
Yes,
and I'm a yes as well. Are there any other nominations that anyone would like to bring forward for our president? Okay. Hearing and seeing none. I will ask for a nomination to nominate myself for president for this term going forward.
so Mike,
Yes,
I would like to make a motion that we appoint Michael Kane to the position of president for the next year.
So moved.
motion made and moved. Pat?
I would suggest the term elect rather than appoint, since this is actually an election by us. Ralph?
I would agree to that modification.
Okay. We have a modification. Kathy, you're okay with the
I
second?
as well. Yes.
If there's no further discussion, we'll roll call vote this, starting with Connor,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes,
and Patrick.
Yes,
And I'll include myself with a yes. Thank you for the nomination and the election. We'll continue with the same sequence for vice president. I'd like to see a hand for our vice president. Tom?
Mike, I'd like to nominate Ralph Page as vice president.
Okay. So we have
Second.
a motion and a second, and we'll roll call vote as well. I'll start at the top with myself. I'm a yes. Connor?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Pat?
yes.
And Ralph?
yes.
Okay, are there any other nominations for VP? Hearing and seeing none, I'll accept the motion to elect our vice president.
I move that we elect Ralph Page as our vice president for this fiscal year.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second that.
And a second from Marilyn. And as there's no further discussion, I'm not seeing any. I'm a yes. Connor,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes,
Marilyn,
Yes,
Ralph.
Yes.
Okay, we have a reorganization plan set for our year starting this July. And I would ask Jeannie, under public comments, do we have anyone signed up?
No, there's not.
Okay. Council comments? Okay. Connor?
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to make two quick comments. First was to thank all of the voters again that came out last month. And then the second comment is the planning board tonight did approve the master plan for the town. So that's the first update that we've had to our town's master plan in 45 years, and it's now been successfully adopted.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
Good news. Thank you. Marilyn?
I was going to say the same thing about the master plan, but I might add that 33 of those 45 years, I was here working in town government. So anyway, but it was an amazing process, and we accomplished in a year's time an incredible amount of data and information. And I encourage all of you to take time to sort through, the master plan and see all the neat stuff that we're going to be working on in the next 20 and 30 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Mary, do you have a report for us this evening?
Yes, I do. So the first item I wanted to mention has just been mentioned twice by Connor and Marilyn. In my report, I wanted to indicate that I thought tonight was a pretty significant evening for a number of reasons, but chief among them was to be the adoption of the master plan. So hopefully a couple of you had an opportunity to watch the planning board meeting, which occurred at 5 o'clock. And I just really want to throw out a kudo to Bethany. She worked very, very hard to get this done in a very condensed period of time. That's Bethany Yao, for those of in the public who don't know who I'm referring to. It was another one of those efforts over the last year that reminds us of how successful we can be when we just kind of put our nose down to the grindstone and get things done. We did attract some new opinions and some new attendance and participation by a number of people through the focus groups. George Kingston, I remember asking him in the beginning when we were about to apply for this grant, if he thought with his institutional experience and knowledge that we had the internal resources within the town staff to get this done. And he assured me without question that we did, and he was right. So it's a great document, a guidepost to our town's future. And I really look forward to leaning on that document, so to speak, for guidance with new projects and direction that we feel we should take to move the town forward. So they really did a terrific job with a lot of help, but everybody had a role to play, and kudos to all of them. The second item also pertains to Bethany's efforts. She was able to successfully apply for and obtain additional funding for the Shared Streets Grant Program in the amount of $38,500. This money will be used to beautify the northwest quadrant, at least in part, by the addition of some planters, some improved bus landing sites that are along North Main Street on the way to the intersection with Dwight Road in Springfield. It's kind of minor things, but I think it'll make a big difference. There are going to be some new crosswalks, some curb extensions, some paintings like were done in the area behind Leahy Field. So This was another competitive grant, and the award letter took pains to praise the application from the East Long Meadow Planning Department. So once again, Bethany just continues to do outstanding work for the town's community development and planning issues. Also on the subject of money, we have received the first installment of the municipal portion of the ARPA funds in the amount of $847,396. That was received in late June. We've not received any of the county allocation yet. We're told that this money is going to come in two, what they're calling tranches. So half this year and half next fiscal year. We do have a list of projects that I submitted to you a meeting or two ago. And in the meanwhile, I've vetted out those projects with the state DEP and the sewer and water commissions to make sure that they were approved in the category of water and sewer infrastructure projects. And they all have been approved. So we're anxiously looking forward to beginning some of those projects, particularly the Cooley and Avery water main, which I wrote a little bit about in my town report. That's the highest priority on the DPW's list of projects. It calls for the replacement of over 2,200 feet of water main that apparently breaks quite frequently and has demanded a large infusion of town revenue and cash over the years and labor to repair those things. So the estimate that we have for that particular project is $658,499. And those bid documents are just about ready to go. As the money continues to hit the town coffers, I'll be advising you of other projects that rise up on the priority list. And obviously, if there's ever any question about this or any other use of the money, please reach out. I did amplify a little bit on the ARPA legislation. There's a sort of a contradictory thing called the interim final rule issued by the Treasury Department that categorizes the uses of this money. And there are 4 major categories, 7 subcategories, and 66 subcategories. So I don't want to take your time tonight at the meeting, but that legislation or that rule itself is 156 odd pages, give or take, with a number of suggested uses and for this money in the different categories. So what I've done as a first step is reached out to the department heads who cover the demographic that is contained in these particular categories, namely our housing authority director, our school superintendent, our health director, our DPW director, among others, to solicit their input from their boards and their constituents about what might be appropriate uses for the town to consider for this money, because it will ultimately, we're still told, total 4.7 million. So that's a lot of money to be dispersed and spent for the community betterment. So we want to make sure that we are transparent in the use of it and put it to its best use. Westcom board feels like it's kind of mundane to talk about such things when we're talking about millions of dollars in free money, but their board meeting from July was postponed to August. Their operational issues continue. Chief Williams was there at a meeting the other day for several hours, and we have as I said, our monthly board of directors meeting. They're continuing to work on the renovations of the property at Schwinnigan Drive and plan on moving in there in December. The staff at the dispatching staff per se continues to grow. They've hired supervisors, they've hired a deputy director, and we're expecting our second year of reimbursement for our full cost component for East Long Meadow to participate in that regional district to be forthcoming very shortly. The fire department hosted its open house on June 19th. As I noted, the an integral part of that event was the further installation of car seats, free car seats that the health department obtained on a grant. I understand that event was very well attended. People love to look at the fire trucks and witness that happened again during the parade. There's no doubt about that. But that was a successful event, and the community, I think, really does benefit from taking a walk through the station. The firehouse is it's clean as a whistle. You could eat off the floor. Paul Morissette does a great job maintaining that facility. And I know the public enjoys the opportunity to have an open house there. We're continuing our labor union negotiations. Now there's 3 unions that are underway in terms of negotiation. The formerly known as the Town Employees Union has split into 2 separate units, neither of which has settled yet. And the police are underway with their IBPO union reps. We're negotiating with them. Let's see, I did forward an application for an appointment to the planning board for Cassandra Casuelo for your consideration. I suspect that her appointment would become official unless I hear otherwise by council action at your meeting in August. I've also interviewed and appointed probably 8 or 9 other people to community preservation, to conservation, to the Council on Aging, to the Cultural Council, the Historical Commission, the Recreation Commission. All of these appointments were made after, not everyone was interviewed. Some of those were reappointments or holdovers from prior terms, but they were made with the input of the department head and the current chair of those commissions to make sure that there was either a recommendation or at least no opposition to the candidates that were being appointed. I had previously reported to you that John Comerford, who was the Veteran Service Officer, was intending to retire on June 30th. He since decided that he would hold over a bit until we selected a new Veteran Service Officer, and interviews for that position will be held July 21st in the town manager's conference room. It's generated a bit of conversation and some confusion. I understand from several people who have approached me that there was some thought that East Long Meadow was hiring its own Veteran Service Officer, or somehow that services were deficient in East Long Meadow. The actual facts are that there's a separate board which is the employer of the Veteran Service Officer, and that's the Eastern Hampden District Veteran Service Board, of which Hampden, Wales, and East Long Meadow are the only remaining members, because Munson recently voted to withdraw from the district, and Holland voted to withdraw from the district some years ago. It raises some concerns in my mind about whether there is still a valid intermunicipal agreement. And so those issues will be vetted out at the next meeting. I just want to assure the council that since East Long Meadow is the largest contributor to the budget of the district, my intention is to have at least 2 days a week full-time with our new Veteran Service Officer in the office at the Council on Aging at a minimum of 2 days. It's only a 30-hour position though, so we would be getting the lion's share of that person's time. And we do have 3 very good candidates, so I'm looking forward to those interviews. On the subject of interviews, I did hire a woman by the name of Erin Kobler as our new COA director. It's not funny, but I feel like I tell you that every other month. I hired a new COA director. So I'm concerned a little bit about the disruption in the leadership at the Council on Aging, although Alicia Smith has done a great job as the interim director, succeeding Mary Beth Dowd's departure in May. I was trying to encourage Alicia to consider a career as a department head, but I think she's much happier leading the volunteer services and coordinating those activities. So she chose not to apply for the ultimate position, and hence we went out again to recruit and interview. And I think Erin Kobler will be a very good fit at that office. She knows many of the staff there from her prior experience in the field. She currently works at Glen Meadow, and she has prior experience at the Long Meadow Council on Aging. So I'm enthusiastically awaiting her appointment. She's not going to start here until August 16th, which is a bit of a delay, but she could start at the end of July, but she had a pre-planned family vacation for the first week of August. So I thought it was better not to interrupt her tenure as soon as it started. So she's going to start on the 16th. There's also some information about the PACE program. I did send out a PowerPoint presentation that I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to look at. And I understand Mr. Canning is in the audience tonight from the Mass Development to answer any further questions you might have. But simply stated, it's my recommendation that the town vote to participate in this program. It's a financing program signed into law in Massachusetts in 2016 by Governor Baker. It allows for businesses and property owners in East Long Meadow to submit energy projects to the Mass Development that are vetted by Mass Development in conjunction with the Department of Energy Resources, private financing, excuse me. And the only involvement by the town would be that the loans, if they're all approved by the primary private financiers and vetted by the Mass Development Authority, the town would establish a betterment assessment for payment, and we would serve as a pass-through. Steve's people, the assessor's office, the treasurer's office, myself, planning, met by Zoom several times with the Mass Development reps over the last year to discuss the detriment, the potential detriment to the town for this. And I'm convinced that there will be a de minimis impact. But I'll leave that for your review. You did get the zip file of all the fees that you asked for at a couple meetings ago. And we can follow up with that later if you have further need for services from my office. We did get bids for our town trash collection. New contract period would start July 1 of 2022. We have a contract negotiation with the successful bidder. It's scheduled for late August. And also we've received proposals for the property valuation services, and Bishop Valuation Services of Agawam is going to be awarded that contract. Efforts are underway to decentralize our payroll processing. It's a big issue for me. It's something I really want to accomplish in my time here. We really want to decentralize payroll. We have a staff in finance that unfortunately on certain times of the year have to work till 7, 8 o'clock at night just trying to get payroll done. And it's partly because they're understaffed, but it's also partly because the processing is antiquated. So this is sort of a follow-up to the ADP experiment that we had a year or so ago. I'd like to find another product that will serve the town's needs, and we're working very diligently on that. And Steve has his year-end procedures. They're underway, determining the department turnbacks. We had a very successful, fiscally successful year. And I'll leave the rest of the detail of that to Steve, but thank you for listening to me for so long. That's it, Mike.
Thanks, Mary. We did have a council meeting on June 15th, and 6 of us here tonight were in attendance at that meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes from that meeting.
And Mike,
Yes.
before we go to that, could I ask Mary a simple question based on the town manager's report?
Absolutely.
Mary, the veteran services agent, you said was a 30-hour position. Has it always been a 30-hour position, or are we decreasing it to 30 hours because there's now less towns involved?
No, my understanding, Ralph, is that it's always been 30 hours. At least since I've been here.
Okay,
And
thank you.
we'd like to make it 40, but the, budget constraints, at least for fiscal 22.
Right.
Pat?
Thank you, Mike. I have a question for Mary. Is there any action that you can inform us about our plan to withdraw from civil service for the police?
Well, that's a bargaining issue, Pat. It's
Oh,
on my
okay.
radar also. Talked with President Kane about it several times, and I have brought it up with the police, but it's a subject for negotiation. But we're on it.
Tom?
Mike, I have just one question for Mary, and that's in regards to the number of appointments that took place. Can you provide a list in those positions and the boards and the names of the people that were appointed to those?
Yes,
Just so we can keep track of them. I mean, I like to know who's on the boards.
sure. Anthony Zampacini was reappointed to Conservation. Robert Dobeck is a new I'm sorry, not Conservation, Community Preservation. Robert Dobeck is a new appointee. Conservation, Mr. Zampacini is on Conservation as a reappointment. Michael Carabetta is a new appointment.
Oh,
Tim Sharanko is a reappointment to the Council on Aging. Joanne Azalin is a reappointment to Cultural Council. Ralph Cooley, Tom Behan, Bruce Moore, and Nancy Heath are all reappointments to the Historical Commission, and Don LePage is a reappointment to Recreation. And as you know, Ms. Casuelo is a nominee for Planning.
Hmm.
So, but I can give you this in writing, Tom, if it's easier.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have a list. Thank you.
If there's no other questions for Mary, I'll entertain a motion to approve the open session minutes from the July 15th meeting.
I motion to approve the June 15, 2021 open session minutes.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, this is a roll call vote. I'll start with myself, and I am a yes. Pat?
yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Abstain?
Marilyn?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And Connor?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Those are the only minutes we have this evening, and we have nothing under communications, correspondence, and announcements. We do have a public hearing this evening that's scheduled for 6:15, and we are well within the parameters of that meeting, that hearing. The reason for this public hearing is to address the Farmer Series pouring permit application from Brew Practitioners LLC from 45 Baldwin Street. I'd like to introduce the council at this point in time. I'm Mike Kane, and to my right on the screen is Connor O'Shea. Down below to my left, Pat Henry. Coming across, Kathy Hill, Tom O'Connor, Marilyn Richards. And on the bottom to my left is Ralph Page. Jeannie, could you please read the legal notice into the record?
Sure. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws that Brew Practitioners LLC has applied for a Farmer Series pouring permit proposed for a location at 45 Baldwin Street, East Longmeadow, Mass. The Town Council will hold a public hearing on the application on Tuesday, July 13, 2021 at 6:15 via Zoom webinar. For the council, Jean Quagletti, Town Clerk, Clerk of the Council.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Welcome.
Don, the applicant is Tanzania Cannon Eckerly. Do we see her, or could she raise her hand in the audience?
Nope, I've got them both coming in, Mike.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm wondering if Joseph is with us for the audio portion only.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I just realized I'm traveling today and I realized my laptop camera does not work. However, my wife is smarter and prettier than me, so you guys got the good end of the stick there.
All right, as long as you're both here. If your wife would like to start, or yourself, maybe you can give us a brief description on what's taken place in the past and what you have planned for Baldwin Street.
I'll start with that. So thank you for having us tonight. My name is Tanzania Cannon Eckerly. I am the majority owner of Brew Practitioners. Tansy for short, if that's easier for you guys. We are happy to be in East Longmeadow on Baldwin Street. A little context, we previously were operating in Florence, Massachusetts for 6 years, technically 5 years actually in operation, but we spent the previous year shut down due to COVID. Our lease ended in Florence, Massachusetts as of March of 2020. So timing, I'm sorry, March of 2021. So timing being what it is, we decided to relocate in a town closer to our home and in a bigger location with more foot traffic. So we have actually been searching for quite some time and are excited to be in East Longmeadow. Previously, we had a farmer brewery in Florence in a 2,000 square foot building that we had strong ties to the community there. We had pouring license there as well as retail distribution of our canned product with an inside tap room as well as patio seating as well.
All right, thank you very much. What I'd like to do at this time now is open up the public portion of our hearing. And I can ask Don through a show of hands if there's anyone in the public that might have any questions that they might want to address. I would ask you to state name and record and address for the record, name and address, and address your comments through the chair, please. Don, do you see anyone in the audience?
I don't see any hands in the audience, Mike.
Okay. Not showing any hands in the audience, I will now close the public portion of the hearing. And if the council has any questions for Tanzania, this would be a great opportunity to bring them forward. Pat.
Hi, Tanzania. Yes, I have a question for clarification. Do you intend on selling your product retail out of that location as well as the pouring permit?
So retail off premise, yes, we do have a limited amount. It's ancillary to our major business, which is the on premise sell of the pints of beer. But recently we signed, just before COVID hit, we signed an agreement, a distribution agreement with White Lion Brewing, although their distribution is a different company name, but we signed with them. So they will actually be doing the majority of our distribution. Our off-premise distribution. It was just more than what we wanted to do, but we have always kept a cooler on site where if you want to come in and get a 4-pack, you can do that as well. We have very limited, I don't think that we've really done any keg sales or anything of that nature. It's always just been a couple 4-packs on your way out the door.
Go ahead, Pat.
So the reason for my question was to ascertain, there are really two licenses here. There is a farmer's brewing license and a pouring permit. And I just wanted to be sure that they were actually planning or able to use both, because the planning board, I believe, approved the farmer's brewing license, the ability to have a brewery at the location, but the pouring permit really needs to go to the LLA in order to be approved for serving alcohol on premises.
Yes, and that's for that clarification.
Yeah.
The farmer brewery ABC permit actually authorizes us to sell the at retail off premise. That's where that authorization comes from. So, and I like to explain to people that, the feds give us the ability to actually brew the beer. The state allows us to put it in a can or in a keg, and the locals allow us to put it in a pint. So that's the kind of the way that I like to explain it to people. Ask me I thought you guys said that you were already going to be doing this type of thing. And I'm like, well, we're going through the process. So yes, I'm very familiar with the distinctions between the licenses and requesting each of those steps along the way and I guess the covenants and the responsibilities that go along with it.
Okay, Tom?
Tanzania, you
Yes, sir.
mentioned several times that you're going to be selling retail out of that location. That sounds like a package store type of a scenario. I know you're only selling your own brand, but you're becoming a retail establishment by doing that.
So the Farmer Brewery wholesale, the Farmer Brewery license, the brewery license, not the Farmer Series pouring permit, actually is a distinct license as compared to like a pub brewing license or a restaurant license or a bar license, a fiddler's license or anything. So the Farmer Series permit itself is housed in the section 19 of the Mass General Laws, 138.19. There's distilling, there's winery, and then there's brewery. The distinction is that we are allowed by law, because we're so small, essentially, and because we meet the definition of a farmer brewery, we can actually sell at wholesale our own, the only things that we brew. So we can sell at wholesale to people who meet that definition, as well as sell only our stuff on premise. We're not allowed to sell anything we don't make. It's very limited in the rights that we have, but is a little more expansive in what we can do with our beer. So the only thing that we can sell is something that I make on site. And by definition, they call it the retail in the statute. And I know it sounds like it's a package store, but the package stores falls under section 15.
Yeah. Just a follow-up question. So you mentioned that you have a agreement with White Lion. Does that agreement carry forward to your location to allow you to sell their products
No, it does not.
as part of your business?
No, it does not. So the distribution agreement is solely for the, they have the exclusive right to sell outside of our place, have the exclusive right to sell at wholesale to restaurants, our product, to package stores and things like that. We've given that to them. We just didn't want that responsibility.
Okay.
But we haven't entered into a partnership agreement. I think that's what you're asking, is if we are a merged company, no, we cannot sell their product in our store.
Tom, anything else, sir?
Yeah, I have another question. If someone else wants to go ahead.
Okay, maybe it will be answered. I just did see Marilyn's hand.
Yep.
Marilyn?
Thank you. Hi, Tansy. I'm Marilyn
Hi.
Richards. I'm looking through the special permit from the planning board, and I know the neighborhood had some concerns about traffic, as we always do. The issue of the outdoor patio, I know that it's part of their special permit and it's been approved, and my understanding is that that would be part of the scope of the licensing for this evening. Can you explain to me what happens out on the outdoor patio? I mean, are people just being served out there? I mean, I don't know whether there's food involved, whether there would be tables, or whether people just stand there and have their beverages as they see fit. I'm just curious what the overall.
What it looks like? Okay, I can tell that story. So right now, what it looks like in our premise, I don't know, well, it's right by the building. So you're familiar with the building that we're going into. There's that concrete pad that's in the very back. It looks pretty rough right now, but there is going to be an overhead door that goes right where the shorter portion of that building that will enter directly into our premise. And the ABC and the federal government actually has to approve that outside patio as well. And they've approved that, and their requirements are that there is just a divide, right, between the premise and outside public area. And so what we've done there is a barrier from the parking lot as well as a slope, I guess, to go up to the public way. We've actually installed box hedge bushes. So what it will be is it'll be an outside patio area that has somewhat of a green space, not as big of a green space as I would have liked, but a green space on the slope, and then you'll have your box hedges that will have it kind of be a more of a private space, if you will. And then, so what happens is the overhead door, it only operates obviously during the seasonal months. The overhead door, there is what we call the retail bar that faces out to the overhead door. And if in fact someone wants a pint of beer, they have to actually come into the entrance. And obviously we card everybody. Everybody that comes in the door actually gets carded. That's part of our business practice that we've always had. And if they want a pint, they can have a pint and they can enjoy it out on the patio. There will be seated seats out there. And your typical, trash disposals. The actual food offerings are going to be in the front of the building, but of course everybody has access to come in if they want to get a bite and have it out on the patio as well. In the past, when we had the outdoor patio, when we were in Florence, it was not as private as it is. It was private in that it was in the back of the building, but it was surrounded by a restaurant and a dog training place and an artist studio and a design place. And so what would end up happening, and it was spaced off by 2 hospital facilities. And so what ended up happening is people did come in during when we were closed hours and the patio tables were there. They would come in and like bring their lunch and sit down. We were okay with that. We would just, obviously there was a trash can there for them to clean up their mess, but for the most part, it was a private, and that, there was never any concern with that other than occasionally, me having to clean up somebody's mess they left behind for me.
Well, I just also wanted to confirm that the actual transaction of the purchase of the beverage was taking place within the primary building and not out on the patio. And so, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's just the way that we've always done it. It's walk up to the bar, and it's easier for us to control who's coming to get a beer that way. And we like it that way. I know during Governor Baker's executive orders, he had requested table service. But now that that's gone, we're going back to the bar walk up.
Okay. Thank you very much.
The short answer, Marilyn, will be it's going to be a lot like Center Square Grill. Tables outside, people sitting there. That's really the short answer. It's in the back, and it's actually pointing towards. The back is facing Center Square Grill. So, and like Nancy said, we've planted the shrubbery out there to make a divide to curb any noise. But we've never had a noise issue in the past, even at our past life in Florence. So, be very mellow area.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Kathy, I saw your hand up previously.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Tansy.
Hi.
Just a quick numbers question. What do you anticipate for seating, both inside and out, number capacity?
So we have a capacity for, I believe it's overall to seat 121 people. We actually don't think that we can fit that many tables in the space just because of the amount of equipment that we have. So I'm looking at patio wise, we say that we can fit about 10 to 12 tables out there with enough space for people to actually enjoy being outside. And then inside, we are looking at probably about the same. Sometimes the occupancy, what it says for a brewery, is a higher number, but when you actually get into an actual functioning brewery in the space that you need, it's kind of a little bit less than that.
Thank you.
Ralph?
Entertainment, are you planning? I saw at the moment there is no application for an entertainment license. So obviously at this time you won't be doing that. Are you looking forwards to having entertainment in the future? I think you had some up in Florence, if that's correct.
We did, and it was great. We enjoyed having the entertainment, and so did the community. We decided this time around that we would wait and see what the community wanted. And we kind of did that in Florence as well. And they asked, and then we went back and said, okay, we want to do this. But right now, we thought we'd get through the process, see what the community wanted. If it's not something that they want, then, we're fine with not doing that as well. Even though it was a huge part of our business plan in Florence, we believe in supporting local artists and local musicians. It's also a part of the community that we move into, right? So I don't necessarily want to bring my identity to the community. I want to see what they ask for.
Thank you.
Okay. Tom?
Tansy, I'm very familiar, I think, with, as a lot of people are, and I'm sure a number of the counselors. I love microbreweries. I love the beers, but they have a very high alcohol content. Generally, on average, double what you can normally get from a regular can of beer. And my visit to other breweries and what's been involved in the business plan is that they stamp your hand, so you can only have 2 drinks. What is your plan?
So a couple things. That high octane beer in a can, and I'll let my husband, Joe Bob, talk about it in a second, because he has his opinions as well. But from my opinion, from my perspective, I think those high octane beers are not good for business for a couple reasons. You do get unruly, and I don't think anybody wants that type of atmosphere. And secondly, if I have a high octane beer, the likelihood of me selling the second beer is null, right? So we keep our beers low, first of all, because they're more drinkable that way. I have no desire to sell, a 12% beer. To me, that's a wine. Secondly, from a production standpoint, it costs a lot more money to produce a high octane beer, and I'm going to be able to sell less of it. It just doesn't make business sense. And to your point, it becomes an atmosphere that we don't really want to have, and we've never had that at our place. And lastly, I'll finish it up as I'm an attorney by trade, and it is I take an oath to abide by the laws, and we choose not to brew a high octane law because I know it's illegal to serve one to intoxication. And if you're serving an 8%, 9%, 12% beer, and they've come over from Center Square Grill, I don't know if they've had a couple of glasses of wine there, right? And then all of a sudden that 8% beer, even though this is the first time I've seen them, or I think they're up to like 12 and 14% now, that can be kind of scary. And so, we weigh those things when we're talking about the beers that we brew and who we're serving. And we are practiced in, gauging our clientele, but it just never did make sense to us for us to be serving, those super high octane beers. And I think other breweries are getting on board with that, because you're noticing they're starting to serve them in the smaller portions.
Smaller cans, yeah.
Joe Bob, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. I'll give the abridged version of that. Our beers range from 4% to 7%. We don't even make a double IPA. We used to, but we don't even do double IPAs. 4% to 7%. Most places you go into, they're between 6 and 8%. So we've got a great range of beers, but we don't do the stamp on a hand. And as Tansy said, we're very focused and cognizant on following the rules and making sure we don't overserve. In 5 years, we never did it. But we're not selling these double and triple IPAs. Quite frankly, I don't like them, so I'm not going to make them, and I'm the brewer. So
Okay.
You won't see them on tap there.
Yeah, thank you.
Pat?
Mike, do we have a presentation or a representative from the planning board to back their recommendation for the special permit?
I know that the planning board was meeting previous to our meeting. I would have to ask Don, and I can do so. Don, is anyone from the planning board in the audience?
I do not see anybody.
Okay.
Then my question would be, I noticed in the planning board's recommendation, and usually I understand they have a meeting right now, but usually we would require that someone from the planning board be here to answer questions regarding their approval of what they understand they're approving. And I noticed that there's no limitation or recommendation from the planning board with regards to food. And we have a longstanding bylaw that requires requires food be served as long as alcohol is being served. And I just want to be sure that there's a clear understanding between us and the Eckersleys and the planning board that this pouring permit still requires food to be served and that they do intend on doing that.
Jeannie, I saw your hand up. Myself and Jeannie had quite a bit of dialogue prior to bringing this forward. Jeannie, could you comment on that, please?
Well, my only comment was that the planning board did approve the special permit, and the 20-day appeal period for that ended at 5 o'clock yesterday. So nobody's appealed that decision of approving their special permit, which is why I attached it to the application so you could see all that background. But I think Tansy can answer the food question because I had asked her about it last week.
Yeah, so by regulation and by law, there's no requirement that we actually have to have food to serve. There's other breweries in all of the state that's not a requirement under the Farmer Series brewing permit. With that being said, even though it's not a condition for us to be able to operate in a condition of applying for a pouring permit underneath the state, we do actually are entering into an agreement with another service provider to provide food. It's just not my thing. You don't want me cooking your food, but we do have the space available and in the front, like I said, that to be offering food, but we will not be provide that service is we're going to contract with someone else to do that service. But just for the record, I would like to, state that it's not a condition of the licensing for the pouring permit for us to actually offer food. I hate the notion that we would agree that would be a condition for us to pour and then our agreement with our food provider expire or somehow not work out. And then a lull, a period of time where we're looking for a different vendor. And then during that time, I'm operationally shut down because that's not consistent with the precedent of the state law.
Okay, Pat?
I would agree that there's nothing that I could find that required food to be served as far as the state is concerned. My point is that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody that's on the License Commission, which I am on, that it is a requirement in our town, it is a bylaw in our town, that if you want to be selling alcohol on premises, you must provide food. Now, that is a requirement of our town, not of the state. And if the state is silent with respect to any requirements, then I would say our requirements would stand in place. So I just need an answer from either the Licensing Commission or from Jeannie as to whether or not they believe the farmer's pouring permit of the state negates our right to require food.
I know others because I went through this in Hadley. I had a facility in Hadley. It was only if you were serving liquor, and I don't know if there is I haven't read the bylaw. I haven't seen the bylaw. We actually looked for East Long. If you were a bar and you served liquor, you had to have food, but not for a malt or wine beverage. But like I said, I didn't see the bylaw if it's there.
Yeah, and I looked for the bylaws, and I guess that I would argue that constructively changes the status or the qualifications of the Farmer Series permit. It by design is a little more liberal than what your Vittler's license and your restaurant license and your pub brewery license are, which is the purpose for it for small businesses and to be able to effectuate these little small pop-up breweries that we are. When a local license bylaw effectively and constructively changes the nature of the enabling law, I suppose, then I guess I'd have to object and say that I just don't see how I would still be operating under my same Farmer Series permit if in fact the bylaw changes it effectively.
Ralph?
So Mike, having previously been on the planning board, what we don't do is we don't allow quote unquote bars in town. Hence the reason, like Pat said, what we do is allow a restaurant to serve alcohol. In this situation, it's a little different. I believe the planning board approved them as a restaurant based on the fact that at some point in time, they're going to be serving food. I believe as a brewery, they fall under light manufacturing because they're actually making a product on site and they're allowed to do a certain portion of retail sales, hence the farmer's license. So I think this is like a two-part series. The restaurant is only for the food aspect, and I believe the planning board wanted to cover that. The manufacturing would fall under the licensing for the farmers, which allows by state law for them to serve it.
So actually, to answer that, when the planning board, we did fall underneath the special permit, well, frankly, because you guys don't have a brewery in town and they didn't. And food, beer is a food product, so it's kind of where they put it. But we actually did not discuss the nature of the restaurant at all. And the restaurant service provider is actually doing that separately with the planning board, I believe, maybe tonight it was. But I do know for a fact from dealing with Northampton, actually, and initially we were the first farmer brewery in that area, and they had some of the same questions. And there was a huge discussion about whether or not we are a bar or we are a brewery. So brewery by definition is a food manufacturer, which did kind of make us fall underneath, have to get the retail food permit in Northampton. But what we are not is a bar. And under the statute, there's a difference. The nightclub being that, you know, you have low lights and you operate at certain hours and you allow dancing on premise, and it's actual definition that we did actually not meet. So we're not a nightclub, which is what the bars are considered. We are actually a food manufacturer that falls underneath the Farmer Series brewery permit. And we've talked about this quite a bit with other locales because it is kind of confusing exactly where do we fit in. We're not a bar, and I know it seems like a bar, but it doesn't fit into that same nightclub. I want to say it's A1 zoning that they thought that we needed to fit in the beginning. It's just a new type of business, and it's unique, and I completely understand this is the third jurisdiction that we've had conversations with, trying to figure out, you know, where is it that we fit into this business permitting and this business licensing.
Thank you. Pat?
Thank you, Mike. My concern is that we do have a number of restaurants, bars in town that would just be delighted if they do not have to serve food or serve food up until 10 o'clock or other restrictions. And I understand that the farmers, brewer, and pouring permit are different because they were enacted by the state government. And I understand that the state government chose not to place any restrictions. I'm less clear whether the fact that they chose not to place any specific restrictions prevents us from placing any restrictions. For example, if we do not require food, can we perhaps not require certain hours? Are we limited in granting them an entertainment license, for example, because it doesn't say anything in the statute? I believe this, I'm in favor of this brewery, but I would like to see the LLA do some research to determine what our rights are as a town. And the LLA has not had a chance to look at this.
So I will say the difference between us and a bar, just for a matter of clarification, is that those bars aren't brewing their own things on site. They're not able, so it's not as if all the bars all of a sudden are going to say, well, I don't have to serve food now, because they would have to put in a whole manufacturing facility to create their product. So that is a major distinction that would be a deterrent, obviously, from getting rid of their food services. And I don't think that, and it's not that I am opposed to providing food. I think it's great that we're bringing in this service provider. It's going to be awesome. What I don't want to do is provide a restriction on my business, discretionary restriction on my business that might provide me a hardship down the line that was unnecessary. And because I don't know what the future is going to hold, and I know how I operate. And so my role here representing my business is to make sure that I'm operating within the rights that I have without adding extra hurdles that might hurt me down the line.
Marilyn, before I get to you, I just want to add that Jeannie had conversations with the ABCC, and earlier this afternoon, I called our chairperson of the LLA, and we had a discussion. And at that point in time, we did not feel that the council wanted to send this to the LLA. I can say that all the information that's been divulged over the last hour since we've opened this public hearing, I would ask the chair of the LLA, based on what you've heard, do you see any reason to have this sent back to LLA?
Thank you. Just for clarification, the council is the LLA, the local licensing authority. We act as the agent of the ABCC. What I think you and Pat might be referring to is the licensing subcommittee, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what you're thinking, Pat?
Yes.
So we'll have to give it a different acronym, I guess. I guess what I'm hearing here and what I observe is that Mr. and Mrs. Eckerly are very well read in the rules and the nature of doing business in this particular industry. To their credit and for our edification. I'm not certain that sending it to the subcommittee is going to yield any more information than what's already been offered or what has come forward from Jeannie talking with both of the owners and with our point person at the ABCC. So I guess I would ask Pat, what else is it that you're looking to have addressed through the chair?
May I answer through the chair?
Absolutely.
My concern, I'll go right back to Tanzania's statement that she wants to work within her rights. And all my question is, we have rights, and I don't know what our rights are under the brewer's permit. I think that the LLA subcommittee would be investigating whether or not there are no rights of the town beyond what is stated in the legislation, or whether entertainment, food, hours, if they're not stated in the law, we have no ability to exercise our rights. That's my only concern. I cannot vote in favor if I don't understand what our rights are vis-a-vis their rights. And I am in favor of this project. I just don't want to give up all our rights without knowing it.
Okay.
So that's my answer, Kathy.
Marilyn.
Thank you, Mike. As I am scrolling through the special permit, which has been issued by our planning board, there is no mention of restaurant at all.
Right.
It's a special permit for a brewery and a tap room. It's in the industrial zone because this is a manufacturing process. And there are a list of conditions that come with the special permit that if there were any issues that came about with respect to the operation, these conditions more than likely would come into play, and there may be a revisiting of certain things before the planning board. With that being said, I have heard from the applicant that they understand the issue of food with respect to serving alcohol. The license doesn't require it. In a restaurant, the common victular license does. And so at least that's my understanding. So that's why we have always maintained when we issue a common victular license for a restaurant that they have food available. You don't have to eat it, but it has to be available. And I get the impression based on the wealth of information that I have learned this evening from this process, that the applicant understands that and is willing to and will, provide the food, but it's not a requirement by law. And so I would vote for this tonight. I would vote in favor of it, simply because the special permit is in place and the zone is appropriate for a manufacturing use. And the applicant is already negotiating a food service option going forward. And that answers that need.
Thank you, Marilyn. Ralph?
So Marilyn, I just want to point out under the special permit, under number 2H, which is on page 4 of 6, it states the proposed use of the property for a restaurant is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaws for the industrial district.
And I question that because the reason why the special permit is being given is because it's a brewery and a tap room, and the brewery creates a food item. So I mean, I can understand this is a hybrid. This is something new. In fact, I suggest we go back and look at our bylaws as a planning matter subcommittee and revisit whether perhaps we need to be a little bit more specific, but that's not happening tonight. I don't want to tie the hands of these folks who have been more than forthright in everything that they are stating they plan to do. And whether they serve paninis or pizza or salads or whatever, some sort of food will be, will be available based on what they're saying.
Kathy?
Thank you. If I may, through the chair, Tansy, 2 questions. When do you anticipate actually opening? And what did you have in mind for hours of operation?
So the hours of operation are actually, I think it's stated in the special permit, but so we are now, they have granted us Wednesday through Sunday. We usually keep the Mondays and Tuesdays for our own, manufacturing stuff. And Wednesday, Thursday, I believe the opening hours.
I know, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, from 5 till 10. Saturdays, we usually open at 1, and Sundays, we usually open at 1, but 1 till 5 on Sundays and 1 till 10 on Saturdays, never past 10 o'clock.
Yes, I don't want to be there late.
And that's what the special permit says,
We agreed with them on that.
11 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Right.
And the second, just ballpark, when do you actually, if in a perfect world, when do you expect to open up the doors?
In a perfect world, last week. But we had hoped for a July 31st opening, but we don't have an overhead door in just yet. So we are actually being held up by the landlord's construction guy. But we hope sooner than later. Hopefully
no later than August 15th. That's
right. That was what I was going to say is, I mean, to be honest with you right now, we've been closed for a year and a half, and every minute costs us a whole lot of money. Jean. Oh, sorry. It's not my meeting. Mike.
Thank you. Jeannie?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Tansy, if the council approves as it goes to the ABCC, then they have to have the final approval before you can open.
Yeah, and in my experience, they move pretty quick,
Okay.
a couple of weeks, yeah.
that, and Tansy will probably change the paint color 4 more times, so we'll probably be pushed off till September.
No.
Okay. Ralph, did you have a question?
I do. When you were in Florence, did you have to apply for a separate entertainment license when you had individuals? So that's no issue coming forwards. It's not part of the farmer's pouring or anything like that. That would be a separate.
No, exactly. It was a separate license and it had a hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Connor, I saw your hand up previously, and I'm not sure if your question might have been answered, but I certainly want to extend the option for you to be able to.
Yes, thank you, Mike. One of my questions has to do with, I'm trying to cut to the chase here in my own mind. This is all new to me and it's new to a lot of us. And I'm trying to wrap my hands around it with regards to the town's rights, as Pat stated. And my question, I guess, would be to Jeannie. Is there an application process, fee? Does the town receive any funds for this? Is there a yearly permit that they have to apply to that we have the authority to revoke if we don't like what we see?
No, so this is considered the same as a new application for any new liquor license. So the application is the same that they sent to me, except it says, pouring permit. And I would submit it to the ABCC. They treat it like a new license. It will come up for renewal with the others at the end of the year, like the other licenses, and it'll be up to the council to affix a renewal fee, just like the other licenses.
Okay.
All right.
And if I can answer that, in the past, it's usually an automatic renewal unless you have an objection, and then we could have a hearing, and then you could deny it based on there's actually, I believe, specified wrongdoing, and then then we can appeal it. So you do obviously have a great space to operate in to deny us the pouring permit.
Okay, thank you. Connor, I'm going to try this again.
Let the guy speak.
Thanks, Mike. Marilyn pretty much answered or said exactly what I was thinking there towards the end. So thank you.
Thanks. Are there any more questions at this time? Okay, hearing and seeing no questions, we're going to close the public hearing, and I'd like a roll call vote to close the hearing, and I will start with a roll call. Yes. Connor?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yes.
Okay, that being said, I'd like to entertain a motion. Kathy, could you present a motion?
I will.
And I would like you, before you present the motion, I would like to make a slight modification, and not only to approve a pouring permit, but the manager as well. Could you
All in one.
do that in a motion, please?
Yes, I move to approve a Farmer Series pouring permit for Brew Practitioners LLC and its stated manager for a location at 45 Baldwin Street.
I'll second that for discussion.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Pat, I saw your hand first.
Thanks. Yes, my position is still that this should go to the local licensing authority so we can ascertain what our rights are. Thank you.
Ralph?
Who's the stated manager?
Tansy.
Beautiful. I mean, I know we have the paperwork, but for the public, they wouldn't know without us actually saying it, so.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, there is a motion on the floor in a second, and this is a required roll call vote. I'll start the voting with Marilyn.
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Connor?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Pat?
No.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you all for your time. Tansy, best of luck to you with your new business venture, and we'll look forward to seeing you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks
you,
you as
too.
well.
Thank
Thank
you.
Okay, our next order of business. Licensing matters, we have none, but we do have Steve in our audience this evening regarding financial matters. And Steve, if you want to take it away with B1, the status of the FY21 year end, please.
Sure. Hopefully it'll be relatively quick. We've closed the books on as of June 30th. That's when our fiscal year ended. We're in the process now of preparing for year end, which is getting all the stuff ready for our audit, and make sure that the receipts and revenue have all been posted, running reports, just all the legwork, if you will, of it. We don't have any numbers right now simply because they change, and as we may find adjustments, et cetera. We hopefully will be starting our year-end audit from Scanlon and Associates in September. Part of the problem, or part of the issues we're going to face, is the OPEB study, which, as you can, if you remember, was one of the reasons the 19 audit was delayed. We have started pulling that together early so that we hopefully will not be delayed. Is definitely our goal to have everything done on a timely basis and start going towards the state and getting free cash certified. As we go along through it at each of the meetings, if there's an update that I can provide, I will absolutely provide at that time where we are. I always hesitate about giving out a number now because that's the number everybody will remember, good or bad. And so I'd rather give an accurate number than to keep giving different numbers along the way.
All right. Thank you. Under our year-end budgetary transfers,
Well,
go ahead. You still there?
yeah, I'm still here. I don't know if you're. Part of our year-end process is that we do year-end transfers to cover line items that may have be overdrawn or in deficit status. We need to have the council vote on anything going between departments and also between salary and non-salary items. So tonight we have two sets in front of you. The first one is the interdepartmental ones, which if you notice, the biggest one is the snow and ice deficit that we're allowed to deficit spend at, and the information technology, which was the emergency course switch that we talked about earlier. All of these are covered by surpluses that we have in our various accounts, and they're listed under the surplus column. And so, I like to this chance to let people know what a great job our departments did in living well within, not only within their means, but well below their means. The net result of this total transfers is roughly $234,000, and about 219 are those two items. So our department heads did a wonderful job this year.
Thanks, Steve. While we're on that subject matter, I'll entertain a motion regarding B2A on the motion to approve those year-end interdepartmental transfers.
I move to approve the FY21 year-end interdepartmental transfers as presented for a total amount of $234,782.13.
I'll second that.
And Mike,
I'm sorry, Ralph.
just a quick question for Steve, that the emergency core switch replacement, that was the one that we had on for capital plan to be done, but it let go early, correct?
Yes, it is.
When you actually look at this, the departments did even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, they really stood out. They did a great job.
I mean, if you take out those two items, it's about 15,000 total transfer between departments.
That's awesome.
I can't say enough how well they did.
Perfect. Connor,
Yes, one.
I see your hand up. Yep.
Yes, thanks. Hi, Steve. Just a quick question on like 4 of the departments there that had, $20,000 to $40,000 in a surplus. Was there any particular reason why they had so much?
Yep, largely due to salary savings. They were short-staffed, as in my department, or the department had their different salaries came in. New department heads may have come in at a lower salary.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Just to recap, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. We started our discussion. Is there any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll roll call vote this as well. I am a yes. Connor?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yes.
Thank you. Steve, if you could continue on.
Sure. The next item on the agenda is it's within the salary versus non-salary line items within departments. And basically we need to have your approval so that we can do it within the department and cover the deficit of those line items. We were lucky again in that there's really only a couple departments that we needed to do that with. And again, going on the theme I said earlier, the department did a great job in making sure they were well within their means.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve that portion of the FY 2021 year-end department transfers between the salary and non-salary.
So Mike, I motion to approve the FY21 year-end departmental transfers between salary and non-salary accounts as presented for a total amount of $19,059.03.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Ralph, and thank you, Marilyn. I'll start the roll call vote again with myself.
Further discussion?
We have a question? Pat?
Thank you, Mike. Yes, I have a question as to what the electrical equipment for $3,680 involves.
Honestly, I'm not
Or is it election equipment?
I believe it's election equipment, yes.
Yep.
Sorry, the abbreviations sometimes throw us.
Yeah. So Jeannie probably could answer that. That's probably the new machines then.
You mean the decrease in 3746? Is that what you're talking
Well,
about?
yes, it's actually a decrease. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that's the software programming for the cards for the elections, because we didn't have a preliminary election, all that
Oh,
decreases
okay.
due to that.
Got it. Yep.
And
Yep.
then the 5,000 was the money spent to do the mailings for the charter questions on the ballot.
Further discussion? Ralph?
Under number 210, police, what does SRV other stand for?
Services other,
And that was the exact same amount increase there as the decrease in the bonus?
no, they, I only transferred out what was needed to cover the deficit.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I just thought it was a little strange that the two numbers happened to hit absolutely perfect, so.
Every so often you get lucky.
I believe there's no further discussion. We'll start the roll call with Connor.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Pat?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes,
Tom?
Yes,
Marilyn?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yes.
Thank you. Steve, thanks for all the good information and the backup. We appreciate it. Under old business, we have the situation to follow up on a vehicle replacement. Ralph, I believe you brought that up at the last council meeting.
I did. So Steve, thank you for getting us that information. So I guess my question would be, I mean, as far as from my standpoint, when we approved different vehicles at different times, I just assumed that the money would be coming out of the vehicle reserve and not out of an undesignated. So what do we have now in vehicle reserve? And does that effectively have said that we're pretty much doubled up on it?
To answer the second part, no, because we just didn't put anything out of undesignated reserve into vehicle reserve to then take it out to pay for the vehicle. We eliminated a step, if you will. It came out of undesignated directly. To the first point, in the water enterprise fund right now, the balance is $260,338. And that's through current year, fiscal year 21. And the sewer has $201,980, of which in fiscal year 21, we purchased a vehicle for $58,000 out of that fund.
That was the undesignated fund or?
No,
that's-
that was the vehicle reserve fund. Those two balances I gave you, Counselor, for the vehicle reserve fund.
But
That's
what
after the
about-
transfer as of June 15th too.
If we had taken all the vehicles out of those, wouldn't those numbers have been like almost zero? I mean,
It
I
would have been
think,
almost zero. Yeah, they would have been, actually, I don't even know if we look at it quickly, we probably wouldn't have been able to cover all the vehicles we did get. The thing to remember is that it would have been in the undesignated fund and we would have
Right.
taken it out of the undesignated fund.
well, what I'm
It's
saying
still-
right now is now we have a fund for vehicles.
Yep.
Even though we've already bought multiple vehicles. So.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm not sure why the transfers weren't made. We weren't able to ascertain why they weren't transferred into the vehicle reserve fund during the years that they were budgeted. At that point, though, now we're at that point, we're gonna put it in there. Any vehicle we buy going forward absolutely will be coming out of the vehicle reserve fund until that's depleted. And each year, as part of the budgetary process, the council can either say, yes, add back to it or take away, or not put anything into it. It was an error, it was a clerical error, for lack of a better term, that didn't do the transfer, put it in. As far as I can see, I honestly have no idea why it wasn't transferred at the right time.
Pat?
Thank you, Mike. Just to confirm, Steve, so what you're saying is the current balance as of June 15th is approximately $260,000 in the water reserve fund and approximately $201,000 in the sewer.
Yes.
And that's something that I know for myself, and I'm sure for other counselors, we always like to know what amount of funds exist in these reserve funds, because on occasion, we might want to have some use for them. And these obviously do not appear to be way out of line in terms of what might be necessary at all. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike, just a follow up for Steve. So if we need more money for something other than a vehicle and there's money in the vehicle fund, we can take a vote to move it from the vehicle fund to undesignated to pay for a project or something. Is that correct?
I believe so. It's a reserve fund, reserve balance. It would take a vote of the council to move it though, I believe.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Okay. Under new business, the discussion of a proposed cottage food operation exemption. I asked earlier, and maybe things have changed. Don, I would ask, is anyone from the planning board in the audience that might want to speak on this topic?
I do not see a planning board member in the audience, Mike.
Okay. Fortunately, we have had the documentation sent. I don't know what everyone's level of comfort is at this stage of the game here. But I'll ask, we'll start with any questions, and hopefully we can answer them. And I know Jeannie will be helpful, and I'm sure Mary has some information as well. Pat.
Yes, I would like to hear from Mary or Jeannie, because the information that I got is kind of sparse. I can see what they're doing. I don't have any inherent objection to it, but I have no idea how it came about or whether this is all there is.
Okay, well, I think it's pretty simple, but Jeannie, could you start off, please?
Sure, I can tell you how it came about. A woman applied for a business certificate through our office, which it usually starts at, and it needs a number of business certificates, need a number of approvals: building department, planning department, assessors, health, collectors, etc. So when it got to the building and planning, the business is to bake products in her home. And I don't believe there was a zoning bylaw that would lend itself to this. So that spurned a public hearing with the planning board. I think Marilyn might have more information than I am from a planning perspective, but it's the planning board's recommendation to make the zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay. Marilyn.
Thank you. The individual who applied for the business certificate went before the planning board, and the concern from the planning board members was that this was actually a manufacturing use, because you were creating a product, although it was baking, but creating a product within a residential home, and it wasn't permitted in the residential zone. So the focus was to create some additional language under accessory use, so that this woman could then bake brownies or whatever item for a small, modest gain within the confines of her own home, subject to the licensing of our health department with regards to preparation of food within the home. So this accessory use, or this addition to the accessory use, would allow this to take place within the residence. And then, of course, the operation would be governed by food licensing. Now, I also would add that this goes under the category of a home occupation, which is already established in our bylaw. So that's all it is an individual doing some baking within her home and being able to sell that. And she's going to have a small business, and she needed a business certificate. So that's how this all evolved.
So the way I understand it, this would require a public hearing to propose a zoning bylaw amendment to protect those in this cottage food operation moving forward.
There is an addition to the accessory uses, tables 3-1, and they're adding an area labeled I, cottage food operation exemption. So yes, this is part of an addition to the bylaw, so it would require a public hearing.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Connor?
Yeah, my only question, thanks, Mike, is there anything necessary, like in the definitions section of the zoning bylaws, to explain what cottage food and cottage industry ought to mean?
Marilyn?
Thanks, Connor. No, actually, at the public hearing for the planning board, I did ask a question about a definition, because most of us do not know what cottage food industries or cottage food is. And the response that they gave me at the planning board public hearing is that they are citing the regulation in the proposed language for the bylaw that will come from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health Regulations 105 CMR 590. And within that section, there's a definition. And the feeling was that they didn't want to put a definition in the zoning bylaw that perhaps could change a couple of years down the road within the regulation. And so they opted not to put one in the bylaw, but it's in the regulation, which is cited in the bylaw.
That
So
works as long,
That's the
yeah,
right,
as long as it's stated somewhere.
right,
Good.
right.
Great. Tom?
I'd like to just interject. I'm concerned that not only this, but other items that have come before us, we are missing the actual petitioners, and we're also missing the pros and cons that we've put into our council bylaws or council rules, requiring that as a condition of anybody coming before us. And it seems like we're not following those rules that we set. And if we move forward with this and anything else in the future, I just like to ensure that we get the pros and cons of all these items that come before us, so we can get to some of the answers beforehand or generate more questions with some knowledge, as opposed to fumbling through it like we have tonight with the pouring permit.
Okay. In this case, that opportunity would present itself, hopefully, during the public hearing. So if there's no other questions, or Pat, you have a question?
Yes, I would agree with Tom, because my concern here, and probably it's misplaced, but I would worry that somebody baking cookies for their brownie meeting might fall afoul of this, or somebody might require, and I know that's not the intention, but once I'm reminded of about a year ago when a woman came in and she wanted a fortune teller license. And the bottom line of that was, we said, no, we'd rather not have a fortune teller license, because there's too many possible definitions and it could cause too much problems. And she said, well, I'd be more comfortable. And we said, sorry, we'd be more comfortable if you just went ahead and did your fortune teller and not involve us. And so I'm thinking that this might be a similar situation. And I do understand that there's a sale here in mind. And as long as the sale is the important thing, then we could eliminate people baking for their local women's club or brownies or whatever. But that's the kind of thing which I think Tom and I feel needs to be addressed, in terms of things that you would consider to be potential risks or dangers, and you want to go ahead anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Marilyn?
The operative word is the business certificate that was applied for. This individual wants to operate a home occupation. So if I wanted to bake for brownies or whatever, I can do that, because that's a normal use that happens in a residential home. And actually, this particular addition to home occupation made such good sense, because it's an activity that occurs in every home anyway. It's just that she's doing the honest thing, and she wants to be able to sell some of her items. And this all came about with COVID, being able to work from her home. And we have other occupations that are doing the same thing. So I see your point through the chair, Pat, but I think the business certificate is the driving force here. Thank you.
Okay. Ralph?
So Mike, if I understand what we're doing tonight is we're simply saying Yes, we can go forwards. We can open a public hearing, have a first reading of this, of which at that particular time, the planning board will probably be there to present because it will be the first reading. And then we have to have a second hearing or a second meeting in order to possibly vote yes or no on it. So this is just to get the process going, if I'm understanding correctly.
Right, and I would hope that Pat and Tom's comments could be addressed during that public hearing, either through public comment or council comment. So,
Again, Mike, I think they need to be addressed prior to, as part of the petitioner's responsibilities. We are to receive a list of pros and cons. They are the content experts. They are the people that are petitioning us to make a decision and vote on something. And they are the folks that are in the know. And if we don't get that information, we're in a sense operating some in the dark.
okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to schedule that public hearing.
I'll make that motion, Mike. I motion to schedule a public hearing to propose a zoning bylaw amendment for the purpose of adding a new item I, cottage food operation exemption, to the schedule of uses, section 3.090, accessory uses.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Tom, and thank you, Kathy. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, the roll call vote, I'll start it with myself. I'm a yes. Connor?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes,
Tom?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes,
And Ralph?
Yes.
Thank you. Under D2, presentation of the town council's adoption of the Stretch Energy Code bylaw. I'm going to ask Don if Mark Rubinski, the Massachusetts Department of Energy expert, might be able to make a presentation for us tonight. This subject has been on our plate before, and I see Mark in the audience here, so we'll let Mark
Sounds great, Mike.
run with the ball here. Hi, Mark.
He's muted.
Yep, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Is it possible to have Will Duraggio also join us? He's in the audience too.
Sure.
Yes.
So thanks for having me here tonight. I'd like to run through a presentation if possible.
You should have screen sharing, Mark.
Okay, let me pull that up. You see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Still looking all right? Okay. So I'm with the Department of Energy Resources. I gotta turn that off. I'm the Western Regional Coordinator with the Green Communities Program. And I'm here to talk about the Green Communities Program. I think that some of you may be familiar with it. I'm not sure how familiar with it you are. The Green Communities Division is the energy hub for all Massachusetts cities and towns, not just designated green communities. So if you have questions, we're here to answer them for you. Right now, we have 280 green communities throughout the state, and that's about 80% of the communities in the Commonwealth are designated green communities. The Green Communities Program, we have a designation grant program and then a competitive grant program. And we're authorized to grant up to $20 million a year to qualifying communities to use towards energy efficiency initiatives. Some have used it towards renewable energy and other projects. Just a little snapshot of the towns. You can see this, right? Sorry. says it's paused. Can you see my screen?
It's still on slide 1, Mark.
Oh, it's strange because okay. Let me, oh, resume share.
I think
How's
we,
that?
there you go. Yeah.
All right. Well, here's what you missed. here's the map of all of our green communities. We can skip that one. Here is a snapshot of the funds that were received by some of the neighboring communities around East Long Meadow. And this is the combination of their designation grant, which is the award that you receive when you initially become a green community, and then also competitive grants that they've received over the years too. So this is the sum of all of those funds. If East Long Meadow were to become a green community, their designation grant would be approximately $150,000, might be a little bit less. It depends on that year's calculations. And our calculation for a designation grant, it's $125,000 base amount. And then we have in an adder, there's a formula based on the population of the municipality and the per capita income of the municipality. And then once you've received that award, spent it out on energy efficient projects that you've identified, and then you're then able to apply towards competitive grants, which are offered annually. We're offering them twice a year in 2 different rounds, but you'd only be eligible for one. So in order to become a green community, there's 5 criteria that you'd have to meet. I was told to kind of focus on the stretch code tonight. So if you want me to do that, I can kind of jump right into the stretch code. Is that prefer? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Head shaking. So I'll skip these, but I'm more than willing to talk about them at another time or another meeting, or answer any other questions for you. So I'll jump right into the stretch code, and criteria number 5, which is as part of the Green Communities Act, was to minimize the life cycle costs of new construction. So the way that a community can meet criteria number 5 is by adopting the stretch energy code. And you would do that through your town council. Normally for a town, it's done by a town meeting, but yours has a kind of a city form of government, so you do that through council. Stretch code adoption by communities. We've had this slide says 289 municipalities adopt the stretch code throughout the Commonwealth, but it's actually, I think it's 296 right now have adopted the stretch code. But another couple other ones in our region too. This time of year, we're usually seeing a lot more adopt it. The stretch energy code only applies to new construction. So to new residential construction and new commercial construction that's greater than 100,000 square feet, or if it's a conditioned space, it's over 40,000 square feet. So the stretch code does not apply to additions to a building, renovations, or repairs to a building. It doesn't fall into place during that. My predecessor liked to say the stretch code is no longer much of a stretch anymore. It's kind of catching up with the modern building code. When it was first introduced, the stretch code was first introduced as a response to a call for more improved energy efficiency within the state. So they offered two different codes that a municipality can do. So any municipality, any community in the Commonwealth has 2 options for their building codes. They can do a base energy code, which is the prescriptive path that you see there, or they can do a performance energy code. The prescriptive path is just what it sounds. It's a checklist of measures. It's inspections during and post-construction. So it would be, you have a minimum acceptable standard, and then you would do calculations, and it's merely involved following a chart saying this is what the amount of insulation it should be in the walls or the attic. This is what the U value of your window should be. Those types of things. It's just following a checklist. You can also follow a performance path. And so there's pre and post construction energy modeling that's done using software. And you're projecting how much energy that building is going to use against a baseline. So you're creating a virtual model of the building and then predicting how much it's going to use. And then you're testing the building too, to test its performance. So when you adopt the stretch code, what you'd be doing is you'd essentially be getting rid of the prescriptive model. So if somebody built right now in East Long Meadow, they could say, we could either follow the prescriptive path or we could follow the performance path. But when you adopt the stretch code, you're saying we're only going to the performance path. So you're removing the prescriptive path option, and then you're doing the performance path, and you're bringing in a HERS rater involved in that to provide that energy model for it. So why would we want to test performance as opposed to prescriptive? Well, prescriptive codes don't guarantee good installation. So even though it's saying you should have whatever in the walls, they may have missed a wall, or they may have compressed the insulation too much, or there could be large holes in the wall that weren't picked up. When we test for performance, when we do a building model and then we actually test the building for performance, they're much more able to identify those potential faults before they're actually released to the homeowner. So they're done by a third party, which is the HERS rater. So the HERS process is they review the computer model, the building plan, and then create that computer model, and then they do the inspection process. If there's ductwork in the building, they'll do the duct tightness. They'll usually they'll have a second inspection, usually combined with the first, of looking at the insulation in the building, and then a blower door test on the building too. And then they finalize the model based on that performance testing of verified performance, and then they give that to the building inspector and sign off on it. So with the HERS model, with the performance testing, the building has to meet, right now the code says a 55 of what they're looking for. And that means it's about 45% more than the reference home. So that's it for my presentation.
Well,
I'm willing to answer any questions you might have.
Mark, yeah, I was going to say, fortunately, we've had this information to start to digest, and I think what would be helpful tonight is to be able to see what questions our council might have,
Sure.
for either yourself or Will to try to answer.
Okay.
So we'll open the floor for questions. I guess I'll start off because I'm just a little bit familiar here. It is a third party company that does come in and does the testing, and it's done, as I remember, it's done at individual stages, such as when a new home is being constructed, they could come in and they could test the ductwork before you drywall or insulate to make sure that that meets the specification standards. After that's complete, your insulation goes in, your drywall comes in. Your second test might be the blower door test, which is really making sure that the whole house is tight, and it does enable a builder or a homeowner to be able to find areas of deficiency where they are able to make those repairs on scene. Is that accurate, Mark?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Mark? Marilyn?
Okay, so if we were to adopt this process or this code, we would we would focus on performance, correct? With regard to the structures, right?
Yes. So,
Okay.
so right now in Massachusetts, you can do if a builder comes into a community and they were to build a new home, the builder they would work with your building inspector to say, we're going to build this home to either meet a prescriptive path or we can go down the performance path. And what we're saying is you're getting rid of the prescriptive path, and stretch code will only look at the performance path.
Now, during we just adopted our resilient master plan. And during that process, we did discuss the stretch code, and we had a local builder come in and share information about the pros and cons of a stretch code. And actually, he was the builder that spoke up at town meeting years ago when we voted it down.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that now people are asking for this, and a lot of their buildings or homes that they're constructing already incorporate this particular type of code, I guess. My question is, you have a third party coming in to evaluate to inspect that whatever you're trying to achieve with the equipment or the insulation or whatever is appropriate. This third party, is that someone that the town would engage, or does the builder engage with this third party? Because you indicated that the building inspector would then sign off after the project was completed. Whose responsibility is it for this third party that comes in and does the inspections?
The builder / homeowner would be.
So they would bear the cost of whatever takes place during this inspection, if there was one, and that it would just be giving information to our building inspector, who then would say this meets the code. And that was, our building inspector isn't necessarily going to be going, I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. The building inspector isn't going to be required to do additional inspections himself.
That's correct. The building inspector wouldn't be doing that inspection. The HERS rater is a third party, and they'll be providing the information to the building inspector. And there is a cost involved with that. A lot of that cost is usually offset through incentives right now. We have some analysis that I didn't give you that can show you that it's the payback is like 1 or 2 years for by going the stretch code path too, because sometimes money's a question that comes up too. And Will, is there anything, or if you're on the phone, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can definitely kind of speak to the costs. At this point, you can see it's throughout pretty much all of Massachusetts. The builders that are doing this, they're kind of already working with raters. They have their kind of partner raters there. So it's really brought the cost down, because part of that prescriptive requirement does already require a blower door test. So if you're really thinking about it, the rater is really being brought in to do the modeling and some more of those ancillary inspections. So when we look at the budget, the overall budget, it's usually less than 0.5% of the total construction budget. So it's a very, very small cost to get that done.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Connor.
Yeah, just to add on to what Marilyn said with that builder, I think the other part of his comment too was that because so many of the surrounding communities and just communities in the state as a whole at this point to it, it's not like a super extra inconvenience that we'd be making them do, as opposed to building in the next town over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And that's what we're hearing from a lot of towns. A lot of towns that I'll do these presentations in, I'll hear from community members that are saying, yeah, it was given to us as an option and we wanted to go to the performance path because we thought it would create a better product in the end for us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, if this is such a great deal, why do we need the 125,000 or 150,000? And why are communities getting 800,000 and 700,000 and 600,000? What is the purpose for those funds? There must be some costs to the town that I'm not seeing.
You mean for becoming a designated green community?
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's kind of the first initial award for, okay, you've checked off your 5 criteria, your 5 boxes of becoming a green community. you're getting this award or initial award for East Long Meadow would be $150,000 that you can spend on these upgrades, on these energy efficiency improvements.
Well, so for clarification, it's not for the stretch, it's for the green communities.
Yes, it's not for, so the money's not for for adopting stretch code. That's one of the five criteria that you have to get. And those other funds that you saw were also competitive grants that these communities received as being part of the Green Communities program.
Understood. Thanks.
Yeah.
Ralph.
So Mark, can you tell me where the Home Builders Association, which is all the builders, stand on this? Because I know when it came in front of town meeting, they were dead set against what they wanted was one consistent building code throughout the whole state. And they felt as though the stretch code town to town didn't accomplish that. That's my first part of the question. The second is, if there's already so many communities doing it, why has the building code just not updated itself and caught up to it? I mean, if already 80% of the towns are doing it, you would think that, I mean, at that rate, it should be pretty simple to put it into the normal building code and not do it town by town. So two-part question.
So the building code is getting really close to it. The updated building code is already becoming a little bit closer. It's what we were saying, it's not much of a stretch any longer. The base building code is based on the international building code. And it's as that updates every single year, they adopt, I think it's every 3 years, they'll adopt a new building code that gets closer and closer to it. So it's really not much of a stretch. Sorry to keep using that, but it's not much of a stretch to keep to adopt the building code, the stretch building code right now. There is talk of another building code as part of the governor's climate bill that was signed earlier this year, and details of that will be coming out in the probably, I think by the end of the year is what they had expected for that. In terms of in regards to your question about the homeowners association, I don't have, Will, do you know anything about where they would stand on that?
I do not, no, not specifically.
No, I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
And Mike, can I do one follow-up on the green community aspect? We years ago joined Community Preservation Act, and we were told that the state's going to match, 100% of the funds up to a certain amount of money. And so I'm assuming with this green community, it's all dependent on what the state chooses to put into this, how much grant money is going to be available for everyone.
So our funds come from the RGGI auctions right now, mostly from the regional greenhouse gas initiative auctions that we have. So it's not identified by the state. So the state isn't saying, we're putting this amount of money into it. Ours are coming from another source through the auctions.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So it's dependent on those auctions, but we've been around for a good 10 years now.
Okay. Any other questions for Matt or Will? All right. Well, I guess we can entertain a motion to adopt the Stretch Energy Code bylaw to the Town Council Bylaw Committee.
Mike, I move to refer the adoption of a stretch code energy code bylaw to the Town Council Bylaw Committee.
Thank you, Connor. Is there a second?
Second for purposes of discussion.
All right, we have a second and we're in a discussion phase. Pat?
As the current chair of the Bylaw Review Subcommittee, I wonder what the committee will be doing, since we don't usually recommend, the subcommittee doesn't recommend major policy decisions like the adoption of green communities or stretch solar. We usually just review proposed bylaws for format and placement in the bylaws. And we don't have any particular expertise. So I'm not sure why we're referring it to the committee. It should be up to the council to me. I would prefer to see this tabled after discussion for approval or disapproval at a future meeting after we've had more opportunity to discuss it, because I'm not sure that the bylaw subcommittee has anything to add. The way this is being presented to us, it's almost like it's a done deal. And the council should pretty much rubber stamp it. Sure, there are benefits and it's great PR, but it also means higher construction costs, which puts East Long Meadow housing a little more out of reach for low to middle income families. For example, demand hot water heaters, on-demand hot water heaters instead of tanks, perhaps solar array requirements. Stretch code requires more inspections, requires the submittal of an energy plan ahead of time. So it's not just a simple thing, and I'm not sure that the bylaw review committee can really accomplish much. As a community, I think we should be looking for ways to reduce construction costs, not increase them. For example, by reducing home sizes, lot requirements, 1.5 baths instead of 3, 8-foot ceilings instead of 10 or 12. Smaller, simpler homes would, to me, reduce energy consumption far more than the stretch energy code applied to new McMansions. So again, I'm reluctant, and as far as the bylaw review subcommittee, I'd prefer to see this tabled for our next meeting at which the council could decide to adopt it.
Marilyn?
I appreciate what Councillor Henry was talking about. And, you know, those are some valid points to toss around. I'm going back to the original slide where it discussed the qualification criteria as to being the designation of a green community. And there are 5 parts to that designation. And we're only talking about number 5, which is the stretch code. So I'm a little bit confused about if we were to adopt the stretch code, what impact that would have on items 1 through 4, where we don't have an energy reduction plan that we've created yet. We don't have, adopt as of right siting for renewable energy and alternative energy generation. What does that mean in terms of our current zoning? So these are issues that I'm sort of struggling with. Why are we just doing number 5?
Can I comment on that?
Mark, please.
Yeah, so I'm more than willing to discuss the other 5 criteria because they're all equally as important. If you don't achieve one of those, then you can't become a green community.
Right.
I was speaking with I believe Bethany about the stretch code. We were talking about that's an important step. One of the next important steps to becoming a green community. So I found myself in the position tonight of giving a presentation on the stretch code, but I wasn't sure of everyone's background on becoming a green community and the requirements and criteria of becoming a green community. And that's why I kind of skipped ahead to criteria number 5, but I'm more than willing to discuss all of those criteria too. I don't want to put the cart before the horse right now.
So I guess if I may, Michael, if we were to go ahead and adopt the stretch code either this evening or at a future council meeting, where does that put us with our quest to becoming a green community, if that's the goal for this council? I mean, there are 4 other steps. Where are we going with this?
I understand where you're coming from. Pat, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just want to clarify. I believe the steps stand individually. We can adopt a stretch code and we don't have to adopt any further. We won't become a green community, but we can take advantage of the stretch energy code.
Right.
Is that not correct?
Yeah, you can adopt the stretch code
by itself
right now. We have a number of communities that they've adopted it right now, but they haven't completed the other ones. They're in the process of completing it. There's no there's no financial benefit to you right now. There's no award. That comes once you've obtained the green community status.
Mike?
Connor,
And I think the other part with the other remaining four, to Marilyn's question there, was it also kind of falls into the master plan, because that were some of the larger themes and topics discussed there about being green and energy and so forth. So I think that's something we could look at in the future, but not something that we necessarily have to do right this moment.
okay, Marilyn?
I guess my confusion came from, the information that we were given to digest focused primarily on green communities. And I have nothing against that. I have nothing against the stretch code. I just didn't understand why we jumped to number 5. And that's what we were looking to possibly approve without an entire package, I guess. So maybe it's more involved than I'm realizing tonight. And if we do the stretch code, I mean, you gave us a map of all of the communities that are green communities. And so that's what sort of sent the message that was the focus of this process this evening. So, thank you.
Ralph?
So Mike, for clarification, all bylaws now have to be done with a public hearing and the 2 readings, which would mean at least a couple more meetings. So this isn't something we can just vote on tonight. As far as sending it to the subcommittee, I personally think that's important so that we can actually look at the general bylaw, see where this would fit into it, and make a recommendation that if we were to adopt this, that we think this would be the best location for it to go, with the wording and stuff like that, that compile everything together and say, this is the right location, and have a public hearing down the road on it.
Pat?
I respect what Councillor Page says, but I'm not sure that that's really valuable to us to say where it should fit if we don't initially approve it. So sending it to our committee, I don't think is the same as saying we recommend adoption as a council. If we do recommend adoption as a council and then send it to the committee, then the committee would have something to do in terms of saying how should it be stated, where should it be put.
Ralph?
Except when you adopt a bylaw, you're adopting the location and the place that it's going. I mean, that's all part of the process as you go along. It's like section 3.090 will read this as the bylaw, just like we looked at earlier with the planning bylaw. So we need to know all of that going forwards at the public hearing, at the readings of it. And I think that's what our subcommittee should be looking at.
Okay. Pat, did you have your hand up again? I'm not sure.
No, Mike, it's all right.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor in a second. We could vote on the motion, or we could think about rescinding the motion. And I'm only guessing what the pleasure of this council is this evening. And it might be to rescind that motion and table this for a further discussion. But I'd have to ask Connor, and I'm just looking here. Pat, I believe you seconded to resend and rephrase the motion. Is that the direction we'd like to move?
I think I'm fine to.
I would like to withdraw my second.
I'm sorry?
I would like to withdraw my second.
Okay, and Connor?
I was going to say I'd prefer to keep the process going than push it off to further meetings.
Okay, so we still have a motion on the floor, but we no longer have a second. Is there?
I will second it.
You'll second the motion, okay? So we're at the phase now where we'll move toward a roll call vote if I don't see any hands for further discussion at this point. And I'm seeing no hands, so we'll start the voting with Connor.
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Pat?
No.
Ralph?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Okay, we're moving along to
Could I also, I'm sorry, could I make another request to come back at some point to give a presentation on the other criteria for green communities?
Absolutely. My suggestion would be to follow the same process you did coming here tonight. You can speak with Jeannie, and I'm sure she'll arrange a time that's beneficial for all parties, and we'll look to continue the conversation down the road.
I appreciate it, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay. So under D3, authorization of the town of East Long Meadow to participate in Massachusetts Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, otherwise abbreviated as PACE. Mary, before I look in the audience, would you want to make a brief statement? I know you're up to speed on what's taken place with this.
Sure, thanks. I don't really have much to add beyond what I said in my town manager's report. This is a program that's been enacted in Massachusetts since 2016. It involves nothing on the town's part other than a betterment assessment so that the administrative costs of setting that up are the so-called detriment to the town, but we have vetted those and determined that they would be de minimis. And we're advocating it because we feel it allows property owners to finance energy improvements through private capital, totally vetted through the Department of Energy and Mass Development. And the only function that East Long Meadow would perform would be as a pass-through. The payment of the debt service on that private financing would be assessed on the property and paid to the town and then transferred. The town would essentially become like an escrow agent in a manner of speaking, where we would just be forwarding the payment of the property owner to the through Mass Development. So they vet the projects, they administer the whole program. Our municipal liens retain all priority that they've always had. The town has no exposure, there's no liability. And we have lost Mr. Canning from the Mass Development, who sat with us at this meeting from 6 p.m. until about 7:40, when he had to absent himself for another commitment at 8 o'clock. And further, everything that, you know, the benefit to East Long Meadow will be, it's sort of a response to the business community, which has reached out to Mass Development, asking them to approach the town management to advocate for the adoption of this program so that energy projects, both past, present, and contemplated for the future, could be submitted through this program. It's favorable financing rates, and we feel it's an opportunity to grant the business community a bit of an additional opportunity, which hopefully would, perhaps lead to some job creation, or certainly expand available business financing options. But very little, if any, obligation on the part of the town. We're simply a pass-through. But if you're still unsure, I refer you to this PowerPoint that I sent out 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's about 10 pages, and it describes the program in detail, but it's substance that doesn't really affect the town. And as I said, we don't have Mr. Canning to elaborate on any questions that you might have. So whatever your pleasure to either act on it tonight or not, it's entirely up to you.
Okay. My previous conversations with Jeannie were that it's possible that we might have had a rep from PACE here this evening, Wendy O'Malley.
Well, Mr. Canning was taking her place. Wendy had a conflict tonight, but he works for Mass Development, as does she.
Mm-hmm.
So that was going to be his role this evening.
Okay, so unfortunately, we don't have a rep here at this point in time. And I'm trying to read where this particular topic is moving, and the reason I say that, and I'll be with you in 1 second, Connor.
Sure.
I'm reluctant to ask Marilyn to read a very long motion here at D3. If the council's pleasure might be moving toward tabling this until we can have a rep available for questions and answers. Connor?
I was just going to ask one question of, am I correct in understanding that this would only apply to the business community and not to just residential homes as well?
Oh, it's any property owner, Connor, that
Okay.
wants to do an energy project that passes muster through the Mass Development and the Department of Energy Resources.
Okay.
All right, Pat.
One of the things that concerned me about this PowerPoint was this page here, which describes a very complicated Rube Goldberg type of presentation that to me doesn't seem to add a lot of value. If we had a good energy project and the builder wanted to go to a bank and get a loan, he could get a loan and he wouldn't have to, as I understand it, this is a favorable rate right now, but he locks it in. I don't know whether there's a limitation on prepayment. I don't know if there's any, I doubt there's any chance to renegotiate it later on. I feel that this is a tremendous amount of work that goes on in here. Maybe it doesn't cost us anything, but it's kind of a Rube Goldberg thing that basically they could go to the bank and get their loan if their project made sense. So somebody might help me out on that.
Well, my only comment on that is that you may be 100% accurate in that assessment or evaluation, but it really doesn't impact the town in the least. It's not our function. Projects, as I said, are vetted through the Mass Development and Department of Energy. And if there's some reason that the project is not viewed favorably, then there's no application. All of that precedes any communication with the town there. But again, I'm not really, I'm advocating for the acceptance of it because I think it presents an additional opportunity for businesses that doesn't exist now. We're not the judge about whether or not the project is going to be sufficient. The only time the municipality is involved whatsoever is after all the vetting has occurred. So to me, it's, as I said, a de minimis involvement on the part of the town with a potential very large public relations benefit. And it's just an opportunity, that's all. That doesn't exist without accepting the statute.
Okay, I realize we have two questions here. Ralph, I'll start with you and then I'll move over to Connor.
So Mary, my only question is regards to the betterment. What if an individual chooses not to pay the betterment fee? Is the town responsible then to collect it?
No, I asked that question specifically, Ralph. It said, and the answer from Wendy O'Malley in this email was that in the event of default, the project's capital provider who holds the PACE lien on the property during the financing term can move to enforce and exercise remedies. There is no, municipality is not expected to do any enforcement. And the detail regarding all of that is in section 11 of the financing agreement, which the property owner would sign with the capital provider. But again, I mean, wait and ask the Mass Development rep. I don't want you to, I'm advocating it, but I don't want you to take a vote that you're not secure in your understanding of what it means. I'm certain it means very little for the town, if anything, but I won't have a vote on that. You know what I mean? So it's up to you.
Ralph, that was a great question, by the way. Do you have another question while I have you right here?
Actually, I mean, I have a few different questions, but I think I really need to direct them to the rep. And I would motion that we continue this to our August meeting in hopes that we could have the rep here and maybe set this up earlier in the evening so that we don't lose the rep.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second, and I'd still like to hear from Connor.
Sure. Yeah, the only point I was just going to make, I think probably about that complicated structure page. if I understand their intent behind that, was that one of the criticisms of PACE programs in other states across the country was that when certain residential properties took advantage of it, they may be more apt to foreclosure if they wound up not paying back all of that money if those particular projects never actually yielded the energy savings that people thought they were going to. But I think given this structure that it requires an actual committed energy reduction and the administration part of that, I think it makes it less risky as part of the defaulting later on. So I think that's probably why they opted to do that in our state.
Okay, thanks. Any further discussion on the motion that's currently on the floor? Hearing and seeing none, this is a roll call vote. I'll start the voting with myself. I'm a yes. Connor?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yes.
Okay, this will be tabled for a further council meeting. That being said, I look at that as one of our summary items moving forward, action items for next meeting. Does anyone else have any other action items pertaining to tonight's meeting? Jeannie?
We have time to set up the public hearing for the cottage industry because I need to advertise that for a legal notice. So that can be on the August 10 agenda too.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other business this evening. I'm sorry. Where am I going? Who spoke?
I did.
Tom.
Yeah, I just want to once again reiterate that before any other business, including a revisit of the things that we spoke about tonight, we received the documentation that we require, and that is the pros and cons for each of these different items from the presenters prior to our future discussions.
Okay, I'm sure Jeannie can help with that as the paperwork comes in. Maybe you can remind those bringing these projects forward that under our council rules, those pros and cons are part of that. And that information will be available for us. That being said, that conducts our business for this evening. We do not have a second council meeting for those watching scheduled for the remainder of July. We will be meeting again on the second Tuesday in August. And that being said, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
Okay, the motion, we have a motion and a second. I'm sure there's no further discussion. We can consider ourselves adjourned at 8:28, and I'm yes. Connor?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Thank you all. Thank you for all your participation tonight. It was very helpful. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Thanks. Good night, all.
Good night.